My hands were bleeding. The fire axe felt heavier than it should. The smoke was so thick I could taste metal in my throat. Behind me, Sohyun's small fingers dug into my waist, her whole body shaking but silent. Always silent. Ahead, through the gray curtain of heat and ash, 3 figures moved toward us. Tactical gear, gas masks, zip ties hanging from their belts like hunting trophies. These weren't firefighters. They were assassins sent by her own uncle. And the father who would move heaven and hell to save her? He's about to become my husband, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Ask yourself, would you die for a child that isn't yours? I didn't think I would either, until that moment. 12 hours earlier, my biggest problem was grading 3rd grade science fair projects. The classroom was quiet, the kind of quiet you only get after 3 p.m. when the chaos of 28 8-year-olds finally drains out into the parking lot. I sat at my desk, red pen in hand, trying to decide if volcano made of baking soda deserved a B+ or an A. Miss Blake? I looked up. Sohyun stood by the door, her backpack still on, her dark eyes watching me the way a deer watches headlights. You're still here, love? I softened my voice. She flinched at loud noises. Always had. She nodded once. Then she walked over and started picking up markers from the floor. She didn't say why she stayed. She never did. Sohyun Park hadn't spoken a word in 3 years, not since her mother died in a car bombing that made the evening news for a week before Columbus moved on. I didn't push her. I just let her help. That's when I saw them through the window. 3 black SUVs circling the front gate. Slow, methodical. The same ones I'd seen twice this week. My instincts. The ones I'd learned in the rough neighborhoods of Kingston, the ones I thought I'd left behind when I flew to Ohio for a quiet life, whispered danger. I stood and walked to the window. The SUVs idled for a moment, engines purring like predators. Then they drove off. Seo-hyun tugged my sleeve. She was holding a drawing she'd made during art class. It was me, standing in front of the chalkboard, smiling. I knelt down. That's beautiful, Seo. She didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed. That was enough. Her father's driver arrived 20 minutes later. A man built like a brick wall with a scar running down his jawline. He nodded at me, said nothing, and escorted her to the armored sedan waiting outside. I watched them leave, watched the way the driver's hand hovered near his waistband, watched the way he scanned the parking lot before opening her door. Sohyun's father was listed in the school registry as a logistics mogul. But logistics moguls don't send armed drivers. They don't need bulletproof cars. I knew what he really was, and I knew that little girl was living in a cage. The explosion came during the annual science fair. I was in the main hall, helping a student fix a papier-mâché solar system, when the basement erupted. The floor buckled. The lights died. A wave of heat and sound slammed into us like a fist, screaming, everywhere. Kids scattering. Teachers shouting evacuation codes. The fire alarm didn't go off. That's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. I ran toward my classroom. 3rd floor. East wing. The smoke was already climbing the stairwell like something alive. The other teachers were herding students toward the main exits, counting heads, following protocol. I was about to do the same. Then I heard it. A voice. Crackling through a radio somewhere in the smoke. Cold. Efficient. Target is in room 307. 8-year-old Korean female. Tactical retrieval only. Leave the rest. Room 307. My classroom, Sohyun. My blood went cold. This wasn't a fire. This was a kidnapping. And every second I wasted, they got closer. I turned and sprinted up the stairs. The smoke was choking now, thick and chemical. My lungs burned. My eyes watered. But I kept moving. When I reached the 3rd floor, the fire alarms finally screamed to life. Too late. Always too late. I pushed through the smoke and kicked open the door to my classroom. Sohyun was crouched under my desk, her hands over her ears, her face streaked with soot. She looked up, saw me, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw something other than fear in her eyes. Hope. I knelt down and grabbed her hand. So, listen to me. We're not using the exits. Her eyes widened. She didn't understand. They're here for you, the bad men, but I'm not letting them take you. You ever notice how silent a building gets right before it tries to kill you? The alarms were screaming, sure, but underneath that noise, there was a stillness, the kind that makes your skin crawl. I pulled her out from under the desk and scanned the room. The ventilation grate. It was our only shot. I grabbed the fire axe off the wall. The weight felt wrong in my hands. Too heavy. Too real. I wasn't supposed to be this person anymore. I came to Ohio to teach, to heal, to hide from the violence I grew up around. But violence always finds you when you love something. I swung the axe. Once, twice. The grate came loose with a screech of metal. I tossed it aside and lifted Seohyun toward the opening. Climb, I whispered. She hesitated. Her eyes were asking a question she couldn't voice. Are you coming with me? Always, I said. She climbed in. I followed, and that's when I heard them. Boots, heavy, tactical, moving fast down the hallway outside my classroom. Not firemen, mercenaries. I pulled Seohyun deeper into the duct, my hands slick with blood from gripping the axe. The heat was unbearable. The metal walls were cooking us alive, but we kept moving. Because the school had 47 exits, but only one was safe. And it wasn't on any map. I looked back one last time through the grate. 3 figures in gas masks entered my classroom. One of them held a tablet with a photo on it. Seohyun's face. They weren't here to save anyone. They were here to harvest her. I left Kingston to escape violence. I left behind the scars on my back, the nightmares, the blood. I thought I could outrun my past by teaching 3rd graders about fractions and the solar system. But in that duct, with smoke filling my lungs and a child's life in my hands, I realized something. I don't give up what's mine. And Seohyun Park, she was mine. The school had 47 exits, but only one was safe, and it wasn't on any map. The duct was a coffin made of metal. The walls were scalding. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. Seohyun crawled ahead of me, her small frame barely fitting through the narrow shaft. I pushed her forward with one hand, dragging the fire axe with the other. Below us, voices, muffled, methodical, Korean. Seohyun Iodi Iseo? Where are you? They were calling her name. Not searching randomly, not evacuating. They were hunting her like she was prey. My stomach twisted. They knew her name. They knew which classroom. This wasn't chaos. This was orchestrated. Someone had given them a blueprint of this school, a schedule, a target. This was an inside job. We've all heard stories about inside jobs, conspiracies, betrayals. You see them in movies, read about them in the news. But when you're living one, when the people who were supposed to protect you are the ones trying to kill you, everything you thought you knew about trust dies. I kept crawling. The heat was unbearable. Sweat poured down my face, mixing with soot and blood. My palms were blistered from the hot metal. But I couldn't stop. Seon's life depended on me not stopping. That morning, something had felt off. I'd arrived at school at 7:15 a.m. like always. The parking lot was emptier than usual. When I swiped my badge at the main entrance, the security screen glitched. A message flashed, "System offline for routine maintenance." Routine maintenance. On a Thursday, during the busiest week of the semester. I'd walked past the security office. The door was open. Inside, a man I didn't recognize sat at the monitors. Young, buzz cut, military posture. Not the usual head of security, Mr. Langford, who'd been here for 15 years and knew every student by name. "Morning," I'd said. He didn't look up, just nodded. I should have asked more questions, but I was running late for first period, and Seohyun always arrived early to help me set up the classroom. Now, crawling through a burning ventilation shaft, I realized the truth. That man wasn't maintenance. He was the setup. And after the explosion, I never saw him again. A beam of light cut through the smoke ahead. A grate, an exit. I reached forward and started prying it loose with the axe blade. The metal screeched. Seohyun flinched at the sound, but she didn't cry. She never cried. The grate gave way. I looked down. We were directly above the second-floor hallway. Below us, 2 figures in tactical gear were moving room to room, kicking in doors. One of them stopped, looked up, straight at me. Time slowed. His hand went to his radio. His mouth opened to speak. I didn't think. I just acted. I kicked the grate loose. It fell like a guillotine blade, sharp edge first. It caught him across the bridge of his nose. Blood exploded. He went down hard, clutching his face, screaming. The other mercenary spun toward us, reaching for his weapon. Chaos. I grabbed Seohyun and pulled her back into the duct. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. I just hurt someone, maybe killed him. I didn't know. I didn't have time to know. Then I felt it, a small hand squeezing mine. Twice. Deliberate, gentle. I looked at Seohyun. Her face was streaked with ash, her eyes wide and dark in the dim light, but she wasn't scared of me. She wasn't recoiling from the violence. She was thanking me. The intimacy of that moment, her tiny hand in mine, the silent understanding passing between us, was jarring. We were in a war zone. I had just committed an act of brutal self-defense, and this 8-year-old girl who hadn't spoken in 3 years was telling me she trusted me. I squeezed back. Once. I've got you. We kept moving. The duck branched left. I took it. We crawled for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My arms were shaking. My lungs were burning. The smoke was getting thicker. Then, salvation. A vertical shaft. It led down. We're going down, I whispered to Seohyun. Hold on to me. She wrapped her arms around my neck. I braced my feet against the walls of the shaft and started descending, inch by inch, the axe strapped to my back. We dropped into darkness. My feet hit concrete. Hard. Pain shot through my ankles, but I stayed upright. I set Seohyun down and looked around. The basement, the laundry room, industrial washers, rows of carts filled with linens. The air was cooler here, but the smoke was creeping in through the vents. I spotted a service exit on the far wall, rusted, chained, but it led outside. Your father sent men to protect you, I whispered to Seohyun, kneeling so we were eye level. These aren't them. Stay quiet. Trust me. She nodded. No words, just trust. I stood and moved toward the exit. 3 steps. That's all I got. The door behind us burst open. A man stepped through. Tactical vest, silenced pistol. His eyes locked onto Seohyun like she was the only thing in the room. I had nothing but a fire extinguisher hanging on the wall beside me. Kingston taught me 3 things: how to disappear, how to survive, and how to fight dirty. I learned 3 things in Kingston: how to disappear, how to survive, and how to fight dirty. I didn't hesitate. My hand closed around the fire extinguisher. Heavy, red, cold metal against my palm. The mercenary was already raising his weapon, his finger moving toward the trigger. I swung. The extinguisher connected with his temple. The sound was sickening, a wet crack that echoed off the concrete walls. He went down, hard. His body hit the floor like a bag of cement, the gun clattering from his hand. Blood pooled beneath his head. I stood there, breathing hard, the extinguisher still in my hands. My whole body was shaking. No. Don't think about it. Not now. I dropped the extinguisher and grabbed for his weapon. A Glock. Matte black. Still warm from his holster. I turned it over in my hands, searching for the safety. I'd seen guns before. Kingston wasn't a place where you could avoid them, but I'd never held one. Never needed to. My hands were shaking too much. I put it down. His radio. That I could use. I yanked it from his tactical vest and clipped it to my waistband. Static crackled. Then voices. Target is with the teacher. 2nd floor, heading down. Captain Sterling wants them both gone. No witnesses. My blood went ice cold. Captain Sterling, the fire chief. The man who was supposed to coordinate emergency response. The man who'd been on the news last month accepting an award for community service. He wanted us dead. The authorities weren't coming to save us. They were part of the hunt. Miss Blake? Seohyun's voice was barely a whisper. She was staring at the man on the floor, at the blood spreading across the concrete. I moved between her and the body, blocking her view. Don't look, love. Look at me. Her eyes found mine, wide, dark, trusting. We're leaving, right now. I scanned the room, washers, dryers, carts of linens, and there, high on the wall, a laundry chute. It had to lead outside to the service area where the trucks picked up linens. It was our only shot. I dragged a cart beneath the chute and climbed up. The metal door was rusted shut. I kicked it once, twice. It gave way with a screech. Come on, I said, lifting Seohyun onto the cart. She climbed through the opening without hesitation. I followed, pulling myself into the chute. It was steep, dark, the smell of detergent and smoke. But before I slid down, I looked back. The mercenary was still on the floor. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. I'd done that. I'd taken a life. Maybe he had a family. Maybe he was just following orders. Maybe he didn't even know why he was here. Sorry, I whispered. The word felt hollow, inadequate. But I said it anyway, because somewhere between the classroom and this basement, I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. And if I didn't acknowledge that, if I didn't hold on to some piece of my humanity in this hell, I'd lose myself entirely. Then the building groaned above us, a deep, guttural sound, like the earth splitting open. Go, I screamed. We slid. The chute was slick with grease and soap residue. We dropped fast, spiraling through darkness. Seohyun's scream, the first sound I'd ever heard her make, pierced the air. Above us, a deafening crash. The roof was collapsing. We shot out of the chute and landed in a pile of industrial laundry bags in the service alley. I rolled, pulling Seohyun with me, just as debris rained down behind us. Chunks of concrete, metal beams, fire licking at the edges of what used to be the school's east wing. We'd made it out, barely. The front of the school was chaos. Parents screaming names, news vans with cameras pointed at the flames. Fire trucks, finally, but they were just hosing down the perimeter, not going in, not searching for survivors, because they'd been told not to. I kept low, moving along the tree line, Sohyun's hand in mine. We were almost to the woods when I saw him. Captain Sterling. Tall, graying hair, reflective vest with Fire Chief printed across the back. He was standing next to a man in an expensive suit, pointing toward the woods. Toward us. His mouth moved. The man in the suit nodded and pulled out a phone. They'd seen us. Some people would have gone to the police anyway. Would have trusted the system. Would have believed that surely not everyone could be corrupt, that there had to be someone who'd help. But I knew better. I'd grown up in a place where the people with badges were often the ones you ran from, where trust got you killed and paranoia kept you breathing. Does that make me paranoid? Or does it make me alive? I didn't wait to find out. Run, I whispered. We plunged into the woods. The trees were dense. Underbrush tore at my legs. Sohyun stumbled, her small legs struggling to keep up. I scooped her into my arms and kept moving. Behind us, shouts, footsteps. But I knew these woods. I ran here every morning before school. I knew the trails, the clearings, the creek that cut through the eastern edge. Sohyun's breathing was ragged against my neck. She was limping. I'd felt her wince when I picked her up. Probably twisted her ankle in the fall. I slowed, ducking behind a fallen oak. Set her down gently. Let me see. She shook her head, pulled her leg close. Seo, I need to. Don't leave me. 3 words. The first she'd spoken in 3 years. Her voice was small, broken, desperate. My heart shattered. I pulled her close, wrapped my arms around her. Never, I whispered into her hair. I will never leave you. I promise. She buried her face in my shoulder and held on like I was the only solid thing left in the world. And maybe I was. If you're still watching, it means you care. That matters to me because I pour everything into these stories. Do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. It honestly stings when thousands watch, but don't. Drop a comment and tell me where you're from. Let's build this together. We stayed like that for maybe 30 seconds, maybe a lifetime. Then I heard engines. Headlights cutting through the trees. 3 black SUVs moving fast along the access road. Relief flooded through me. Help. Maybe someone had called the police. Real police, not Sterling's crew. The SUVs skidded to a stop. Doors flew open. Men poured out, armed, organized. But these weren't cops. These were Dong-seok's men. And from the way they were looking at me, the teacher holding the Mafia boss's daughter in the middle of the woods while the school burned behind us, they thought I'd kidnapped her. I survived the fire, but now I had to survive the father. They moved fast. 2 bodyguards, massive, trained, lethal, closed the distance before I could even think about running. The first one grabbed my arm, twisting it behind my back. Pain shot through my shoulder. Instinct took over. Kingston instinct. I dropped my weight, used his momentum against him, and drove my elbow backward into his ribs. He grunted. His grip loosened. I spun, brought my knee up hard into his gut, then smashed my forehead into his nose. Cartilage crunched. Blood sprayed. He staggered back, cursing in Korean. The second bodyguard came at me from the side. I ducked, but he was faster. His arm locked around my throat. Chokehold. Professional. I clawed at his arm, gasping for air. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. Then Seo-hyun screamed, not words, just a raw, animal sound of terror. The bodyguard's grip tightened. My knees buckled. The world tilted. And then, enough. 1 word. Cold. Commanding. Final. The pressure on my throat released. I collapsed to the ground, coughing, sucking in air. My vision cleared slowly. A man stood in front of me. Tall, lean, expensive suit jacket over a blood-spattered white shirt. His face was carved from stone, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that looked like they'd seen too much death to be surprised by more. Dong-seok Park. The man whose daughter I just saved. The man whose world had just tried to kill us both. He was holding a gun. A sleek black pistol aimed directly at my head. You took my daughter. His voice was flat, emotionless. The kind of calm that comes right before an execution. I saved her, I gasped, still on my knees. That's what kidnappers say. He cocked the hammer. The click was deafening. Appa! Soyeon threw herself in front of me. Her small body, fragile, trembling, stood between me and the gun. She spread her arms wide like she could shield me from a bullet with sheer will, protecting me. The way I'd protected her. Dong-seok froze. His gun hand trembled. The barrel wavered. His jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. And then I saw it. Tears. Silent. Streaming down his face. The ruthless mafia boss, the man who controlled half the Midwest underworld, who'd built an empire on blood and fear, was crying. Not rage. Grief. So yeah. His voice broke, huh? Are you okay? Sohyun nodded. She didn't move. Didn't lower her arms. Dong-seok's hand dropped. The gun hung limp at his side. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. Who are you? Her teacher, Kiana Blake. He studied me, the soot on my face, the blood on my hands, the way So-hyun was still standing between us, refusing to let him hurt me. One of his men approached, holding a tablet. Boss, you need to see this. Dongseok took the tablet without looking away from me. His eyes flicked down to the screen. Security footage. Grainy. Time-stamped from that morning. The maintenance crew entering the school, disabling the alarms, planting charges in the basement. His face went dark. Murderous. Freeze that, he said, voice like gravel. Zoom in, that man, third from the left. The tech zoomed. The image pixelated, then sharpened. A face. One Dongseok clearly recognized. My brother's man, he whispered. Then louder, venomous. My brother did this. An inside job. Family betrayal. The worst kind. He looked at me again. This time, something had shifted in his eyes. Respect. Dongseok holstered his weapon. Then he did something I never expected. He knelt, got down on one knee in the dirt, eye level with me. A king bowing to a stranger. You saved her. His voice was thick with emotion. That makes you untouchable in my world, but it also makes you a target. I didn't understand. What? The men who tried to take So-hyun? They saw your face. They know you interfered. My brother knows. And when word spreads that a teacher took down 3 of his mercenaries, he shook his head. If you go home tonight, you'll be dead by morning. The weight of his words settled over me like a shroud. My apartment, my quiet life, my routine, all of it was gone. Burned away with the school. So what? I said, my voice harder than I intended. You want me to just disappear? Change my name? Run? No, Took stood, extended a hand. I want you to come with us. I stared at his hand. Calloused, scarred. The hand of a man who'd built an empire and destroyed anyone who threatened it. Tell me in the comments, would you trust the man whose world just tried to kill you, or would you run? Why? I asked. Because my daughter won't eat, won't sleep, and won't speak to anyone but you. His eyes softened, just barely, and because you're the first person in 3 years who she's tried to protect. He gestured toward the SUVs. Come with us. I'll explain at the safe house. And if I say no, then I leave 6 men here to guard you, and you live the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. I looked at So-hyun. She was staring up at me with those wide, dark eyes, desperate, pleading. She nodded. One small, frantic nod that said everything. Please. Don't leave me. I'd made her a promise in the woods. A promise I couldn't break. Okay, I whispered. I'll come. Dongseok's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed. He motioned to his men. They moved immediately, forming a protective perimeter around us. As I stood and took So-hyun's hand, Dongseok leaned close. His voice was low. Dangerous. You saved my daughter from hell. I won't forget that. But understand, once you enter my world, there's no going back. I looked at the burning school behind us, at the bodies left in our wake, at the life I'd just lost. I think I'm already there. He almost smiled. Almost. Then welcome to the Dongpa, Miss Blake. I followed the devil into his fortress and found a broken family inside. The safe house looked like every other house on the street. Beige siding, manicured lawn, a basketball hoop in the driveway, the kind of place where you'd expect soccer moms and neighborhood barbecues. But I saw the cameras, hidden in the eaves, disguised as outdoor lights. I saw the way the mailbox at the curb had a reinforced steel core. And when we pulled into the garage, I saw the weapons locker built into the wall. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress, disguised as one. Inside, the illusion continued. Family photos on the walls, a kitchen that smelled faintly of jasmine tea, hardwood floors that gleamed under soft lighting, but there were armed guards in every hallway, surveillance monitors in the study, bulletproof glass in every window. So-hyun lived in a golden cage. She walked through the house like a ghost, head down, silent. She knew every camera angle, every guard's position. This wasn't new to her. This was her life, and it broke my heart. Dongseok led me to the living room. He gestured to a leather couch. I sat. He didn't. He stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the quiet suburban street like he was watching for threats. My wife, he said suddenly. So-hyun's mother. Her name was Ji-yeon. I stayed quiet. Listened. 2 years ago, she was driving So-hyun to a piano recital. I was supposed to go with them, but I had business. Always business. His voice was hollow. A car bomb. Remote detonation. They waited until Ji-yeon was on the highway. Maximum casualties, maximum message. My chest tightened. Ji-yeon died instantly. So-hyun survived. Barely. She was in the hospital for 3 months, burns, broken bones, nightmares. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were red-rimmed, haunted. When she came home, she didn't speak, hasn't spoken since. The doctor said it's selective mutism, trauma response. Until today, I whispered. He nodded. Until today, when she told you not to leave her. Silence stretched between us, heavy, suffocating. I've been a ghost in my own home, Dongshok continued. I threw myself into revenge, into building the empire bigger, stronger, untouchable. I thought if I made us powerful enough, no one would ever hurt us again. He laughed bitterly. But power just makes you a bigger target. Is that why your brother? My brother wants what I have. The Dongpa, the territory, the respect. His jaw clenched. He thought if he took Seoyeon, I'd crumble, negotiate, give him everything. But you wouldn't. I'd burn the world first. The conviction in his voice was absolute, terrifying, and somehow comforting, because whatever else Dongseok Park was, criminal, killer, mafia boss, he was a father first. A small hand tugged my sleeve. I looked down. Sohyun was standing beside the couch, her eyes wide, her expression urgent. She pulled my hand, wanted me to follow. Dongseok nodded. Go. I need to make some calls. I let Sohyun lead me upstairs. Down a hallway lined with more photos. Jiyeon smiling, Sohyun as a baby, family moments frozen in time. She stopped at a door. Her room. She pushed it open and pulled me inside. The room was overwhelming. Drawings. Everywhere. Taped to the walls, spread across the floor, stacked on her desk, hundreds of them, and they were all of me. Me at the chalkboard. Me reading to the class, me helping a student tie their shoe, me laughing, me correcting papers, me standing by the window. Every moment Sohyun had spent in my classroom, she'd captured, obsessively, desperately. I was the one person who made her feel safe. And looking at these drawings, crayon and marker and pencil, crude but earnest, I realized something. She'd been planning this. Maybe not consciously, but some part of her knew that I was the lifeline she needed. Knew that if the world ever came for her again, I'd be the one to fight back. I started laughing. Not cruelly, not mockingly, but with exhausted, disbelieving warmth. I turned to Soyeon, who was watching me nervously. You planned this, didn't you? I said, kneeling down. You little genius. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. I pulled her into a hug. I'm not going anywhere, So, I promise. She wrapped her arms around my neck and held on like I was the only thing keeping her anchored to the earth. The moment shattered with a knock at the door. Dongseok stood in the doorway. His face was ashen. His phone was still in his hand. What's wrong? I asked, standing. He looked at me, then at Seohyun, then back at me. They have your family in Jamaica, he said quietly. They found them in 6 hours. The world tilted. What? Your mother, your sister. They're alive, for now. But my brother's people are watching them, waiting for orders. No. I'd left Jamaica to keep them safe, to build a life far away from the violence. And now, because of me, because I'd saved Sohyun, they were in danger. My knees buckled. I sank onto the edge of Sohyun's bed. How? My voice cracked. How did they find them so fast? Because they have resources, and because they knew you'd be a problem the moment you interfered. I buried my face in my hands. For the first time since the fire started, I cried. Not for myself. Not for the terror or the blood or the men I'd killed. For my mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to send me to college. For my sister, who was supposed to get married next year. For the family I'd tried so hard to protect, now caught in a war they didn't even know existed. Sohyun climbed onto the bed beside me. She didn't say anything, just pressed herself against my side and wrapped her small arms around me. She didn't let go. Dongseok entered the room fully, closed the door behind him. I can protect your family, he said, but only if you accept my offer. I looked up, tears streaming down my face. What offer? He pulled a chair over and sat across from me. Eye level, serious. A blood marriage. I blinked. A what? It's both a legal contract and an underworld pact. You become my wife on paper. In the eyes of the Dongpa, you become family, untouchable, protected, and you gain full authority over Seohyun's safety. You want me to marry you. I want you to join my family. There's a difference. He leaned forward. Sohyun won't eat, won't sleep, and won't speak to anyone but you. My enemies know your face now. They know you're a threat. If you walk away, you die. Your family dies, and my daughter loses the only person who's made her feel safe in 2 years. So I have no choice. You always have a choice. His eyes were hard. But some choices cost more than others. She's making a choice most of us pray we never face. If this story is gripping you, subscribe before the next twist. I need your support to keep bringing you these deep dives. Don't be the person who watches and ghosts. Stay with me. What if I say no? I whispered. Dongseok's expression didn't change. Then we both lose everything. Silence. I looked at Sohyun, still clinging to me. Her face was buried in my shoulder. But I felt her trembling. Then, barely audible, she whispered one word. Stay. I closed my eyes, thought about my mother, my sister, my quiet life that no longer existed, thought about the little girl in my arms who'd finally spoken because she was terrified of losing me. I had a choice, freedom and death or chains and survival. I chose her. The ceremony took 11 minutes. No flowers, no guests, no music. Just Dongseok, me, a lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, and a legal document printed on cream-colored paper. The lawyer spread it across the dining table. This is a binding contract recognized by the state of Ohio and, he glanced nervously at Dongseok, certain other organizations. A blood marriage. Half legal marriage, half underworld pact. I scanned the document. Dense legalese. Property rights. Custody arrangements. A clause about mutual protection under syndicate law. Sign here, the lawyer said, pointing to a line at the bottom. I picked up the pen. It was heavy. Expensive. The ink was blood red. Wait, I said. Dongseok's eyes narrowed. Second thoughts? I want to add a clause. The lawyer looked at Dongseok, who nodded. I want full authority over Sohyun's protection, I said. No interference from your men, your brother, or anyone else in the Dongpa. If I say she stays home, she stays. If I say we move, we move. My word is final when it comes to her safety. The lawyer's eyebrows shot up. That's highly irregular. Then make it regular. Dongseok studied me for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he smiled. Faint, but real. Write it in, he told the lawyer. 5 minutes later, the clause was added. I signed first. The ink felt warm against the paper, like it was alive. Dongseok signed next. His signature was sharp, decisive, final. Congratulations, the lawyer muttered, packing his briefcase. You're now legally. Dongseok's phone rang. He answered immediately, listened. His face went stone cold. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. Understood. He hung up, looked at me. They're coming, tonight. My stomach dropped. Who? My brother's people, the rival gangs he's allied with. They know you're here. They know Sohyun's here. He stood, already moving toward the weapons locker. They're coming to finish what they started. The lawyer grabbed his briefcase and practically ran for the door. Dongseok turned to me. His expression was unreadable. Can you fight? I thought about the mercenary in the laundry room, the blood on my hands, the way I'd swung that fire extinguisher without hesitation. Ask yourself what you'd become to protect your child, I said quietly. Then you'll know what I'm capable of. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Respect. Maybe even fear. Good, he said, because you're about to find out. The basement of the safe house was an armory. Rifles mounted on the walls, handguns in locked cases, tactical vests hanging on hooks like coats, ammunition stacked in military crates. Dongseok's men were already gearing up. 6 of them, all built like they'd been carved from granite. I walked in, and the room went quiet. One of them, a man with a shaved head and a scar running down his neck, smirked. Boss, you can't be serious. She's a teacher. She's my wife, Dongseok said flatly, and she's fighting. With all due respect, train her, Dongseok cut him off. You have 30 minutes. The scarred man, I later learned his name was Hun, looked me up and down like I was a waste of his time. Fine, let's see what you've got. He stepped into the center of the room, pulled a practice knife from his belt, tossed it to me. I caught it. Come at me, he said. Show me you won't get yourself killed in the first 5 seconds. I didn't move. He rolled his eyes. Look, I get it. You're scared. But if you freeze up there tonight. I moved. Fast, low. The way my father taught me when I was 15 and the gangs in Kingston started getting bold, I closed the distance in 2 steps, dropped to one knee, and swept Hun's legs. He went down hard. Before he could react, I had the practice knife at his throat and my knee on his chest. Silence. Hyun stared up at me, stunned. I grew up in Kingston, I said, breathing hard. You don't survive there by freezing. I stood, offered him a hand. He took it, grudgingly. The other men weren't smirking anymore. All right, Hyun said, rubbing his neck. Maybe you won't die in the first 5 seconds. Dongseok, leaning against the wall, allowed himself a small smile. Told you. They gave me a tactical vest. Kevlar plates, heavy but manageable. A handgun I barely knew how to use. And a combat knife that felt more natural in my hand than the gun ever would. I was strapping the vest on when I felt eyes on me. Sohyun stood in the doorway. She was holding her stuffed rabbit, the one she'd had since she was a baby. Her eyes were wide, afraid. You, fight? She whispered in broken English. I walked over and knelt down so we were eye level. For you? I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Always. She threw her arms around my neck, held on tight. I'm scared, she whispered into my shoulder. Me too, I admitted. But that's okay. Being scared means you're still human. Will you come back? I pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. I promise. She nodded, wiped her tears. Then she did something that broke me. She took off her rabbit's tiny scarf, a strip of yellow fabric, and tied it around my wrist. For luck, she said. I kissed her forehead. Thank you, love. Dong-seok appeared in the doorway. It's time. Get her to the panic room. One of the guards, a woman named Ji-won, took So-hyun's hand. Come on, sweetheart. I'll stay with you. So-hyun looked back at me one last time before disappearing down the hallway. I was heading back to the armory when it happened. The lights went out. Total darkness. Then a second later, red emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in a hellish glow. Dong-seok's voice crackled over the intercom, calm but deadly. They're here. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. My hands tightened around the knife. Somewhere above us, glass shattered. Shouts. Gunfire. The siege had begun. The siege wasn't just about territory. It was about erasing the Park bloodline, and they had no idea who they were dealing with. Get to the panic room. Dong-seok's order was firm, final, but I was already strapping a knife to my thigh. No, he grabbed my arm. Kiana, this isn't. I yanked free. Met his eyes. You made me your queen. You signed a contract 11 minutes ago that made me part of this family, so let me act like one. His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he'd physically drag me to the panic room himself. Then Hun spoke up from across the armory. Boss, we could use the extra hands. She's proven herself. Dong-seok looked at me for a long, hard moment. Then he pulled a handgun from the weapons locker and placed it in my hands. Stay behind cover. Don't be a hero. Same to you, I said. He almost smiled, almost. Above us, an explosion rocked the foundation. Dust rained from the ceiling. The battle had reached the main floor. Move out, Dong-seok commanded. We split into pairs. Dong-seok and Hun took the front entrance. 2 others covered the garage. I was paired with a younger guard named Tae, baby-faced but deadly serious, assigned to patrol the East Wing hallways. Stay close, Tae said, and if you see movement, don't hesitate. I nodded. We moved through the red-lit corridors like ghosts. The first wave hit hard. Windows exploded. Glass rained down. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions, coordinated, professional, overwhelming. They weren't trying to negotiate. They were trying to erase us. Ty and I took position behind a reinforced doorframe. Across the hall, shadows moved. 3 men in tactical gear, sweeping room to room. They were hunting. I felt my heartbeat slow, focus narrow. The same calm that had come over me in the laundry room descended again, and then without thinking, I started humming. A lullaby. Jamaican. The same one I used to sing to Seo-hyun when she'd get anxious during thunderstorms. Hush, little darling, don't you cry. Tae looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but the melody steadied me, grounded me, reminded me why I was here. Not for revenge, not for survival, for her. The 3 men advanced. I hummed louder. One of them paused, cocked his head, confused by the sound, soft, maternal, wrong in a war zone. That hesitation cost him. Tae took the shot. Clean. Center mass. The man dropped. The other 2 scattered, but they'd lost their formation, lost their edge. I moved. The safe house had a garden. I'd noticed it that afternoon while Seo-hyun showed me her drawings. Ornamental plants. Beautiful but deadly. Oleander, foxglove, belladonna. Dong-seok's late wife had been a botanist. Every plant in that garden was toxic. I'd pulled several stems earlier, crushed them into a paste, and smeared it on the doorframe of the guest bedroom. Now I led one of the attackers straight to it. He chased me down the hallway, weapon raised. I ducked into the guest room. He followed without hesitation, gripping the doorframe as he swung inside. His palm made full contact with the poison. I didn't wait to see the effects. I was already moving, back into the hallway, locking the door behind me. 30 seconds later, I heard him collapse, convulsing. The neurotoxin worked fast. Tae caught up to me, breathing hard. What the hell did you do? Classroom trick, I said. Teach kids about nature. They remember. Teach adults about poison. They underestimate you. He stared at me. Remind me never to piss you off. We moved deeper into the compound. That's when I heard it. Static. A radio transmission, faint but clear, coming from a downed attacker's body. I grabbed the radio and pressed it to my ear. Sterling has the second floor. Repeat, Captain Sterling has the second floor. He wants the teacher alive. Brother's orders. My blood ran cold. Captain Sterling, the fire chief, the man who'd let my school burn, he was here, leading the assault, and Dong-sok's brother had paid him to finish what he started. I keyed into the radio frequency and listened. They were coordinating. 60 men, maybe more. This wasn't a raid, it was an execution. We need to tell Dong-sok, Tae said. No time. Sterling's heading for the panic room. He knows where So-hyun is. Tae's eyes widened. How? Because someone told him. A mole. Had to be. Someone inside Dong-sok's circle had sold us out. I started running. The hallway leading to the panic room was a kill box by design. Narrow, single entry point, reinforced walls. Perfect for defense. But only if you had time to set up. I didn't. I had 15 seconds before Sterling's team rounded the corner. 15 seconds to stop them from reaching So-hyun. I looked around. Thought fast. Classroom psychology. I'd spent 8 years managing 28 third graders, controlling chaos, redirecting attention, the emergency lights, the hallway speakers, the motion sensors. I could work with this. I ripped the cover off the motion sensor and rewired it to trigger the hallway speakers at maximum volume. Then I positioned myself at the far end of the hall, visible but backlit by the red emergency lights. A shadow, a target, bait. When Sterling's men rounded the corner, they saw me immediately. There. They advanced, weapons raised, the motion sensor triggered. The speakers erupted with a deafening screech, feedback loop cranked to unbearable levels. The men flinched, covering their ears, disoriented. I moved, knife in hand, low and fast. I took out the first man's knee. He went down screaming. The second swung at me blindly. I ducked, drove the knife into his thigh, twisted. The third managed to fire. The shot went wide, punching through drywall. Tae came from behind and dropped him with 2 clean shots. The hallway fell silent, except for the groaning of wounded men. We all think we know what we do in a war zone, but none of us really knows until the lights go out. I'd always imagined I'd freeze, that I'd be paralyzed by fear, but I wasn't. I was sharper than I'd ever been, focused, alive, and that terrified me more than any of the men I just fought. Somewhere in the compound, Dong-suk was watching. I didn't know it then, but later he'd tell me. He'd pulled up the security feed from the hallway, watched me dismantle 3 armed attackers with nothing but a knife and a high school physics trick. He'd expected a victim, a civilian caught in his world. Instead, he saw a weapon. Someone who didn't just survive, someone who hunted. And in that moment, he realized he hadn't saved me. I'd saved him. The compound shook with another explosion. Close, too close. Then through the smoke and chaos, I heard a voice, amplified, calm, mocking. Come out, teacher. Captain Sterling. He'd breached the main floor. Let's see if you're as tough as they say. I looked at Tae. He was pale, shaking. Go, I said. Reinforce the panic room. Don't let anyone through. What about you? I'm going to remind him where I come from. I reloaded the handgun Dong-suk had given me, checked the knife on my thigh, felt the yellow scarf So-hyun had tied around my wrist. I didn't come from Ohio. I came from a place where survival isn't taught, it's earned, and I was about to remind him. I found him in the main hall. Captain Sterling stood among the wreckage like he owned it. Shattered glass crunched under his boots. Smoke curled around him like a shroud. He still wore his fire chief's vest, the reflective strips catching the emergency lights. The man who'd let my school burn, who'd stood outside and pointed mercenaries toward innocent children, who'd been paid to look the other way while a little girl was hunted. He saw me and smiled. There she is, the hero teacher. I stepped into the light. My silk wedding gown, the one I'd signed a blood contract in less than 2 hours ago, was torn and stained with soot, combat boots underneath, tactical vests over the bodice, and in my hand, a shard of broken glass from the shattered window, gripped like a blade. I looked ridiculous. I looked deadly. He laughed. You're just a teacher. I moved closer, steady, unafraid. I'm a Kingston survivor, I said quietly. We don't lose. His smile faltered. He came at me fast, trained, professional. A baton appeared in his hand, collapsible steel, the kind riot police carry. He swung for my head. I ducked. The baton whistled past my ear. This wasn't going to be a movie fight. No dramatic music, no choreography, just 2 people trying to kill each other in the most efficient way possible. He swung again. I blocked with my forearm. Pain shot up to my shoulder, but I didn't let go of the glass shard. I countered with a slash across his thigh. The glass bit deep. He grunted, staggered back. You know what your problem is? I said, circling him. You underestimate people who have nothing left to lose. He lunged, drove the baton toward my ribs. I twisted, let his momentum carry him past me, and brought the glass down across his shoulder blade. He roared, spun, backhanded me across the face. My vision exploded white. I tasted copper. Hit the ground hard. He stood over me, breathing heavy, blood dripping from multiple wounds. You're tough. I'll give you that, but you're out of your league. He raised the baton for a killing blow. I swept his legs, he went down, the baton clattered away, and then I was on him. Glass shard pressed to his throat, my knee on his chest, both of us bloody, gasping, refusing to quit. He landed a punch to my jaw. Hard. My head snapped to the side, I spit blood, and I laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not hysteria, but genuine, dark amusement. You hit like my students, I said. His eyes widened, confused, unnerved. The absurdity of it, that in this moment, in this blood-soaked hall, I was comparing a corrupt fire chief to 8-year-olds, was jarring even to me. But it was true. I'd taken harder hits breaking up playground fights. I pressed the glass deeper. Now, let's talk. He was bleeding out. Not fast, but steady. The wounds I'd inflicted were adding up. He knew it. I knew it. Who's the mole? I demanded. Someone inside told you where we were, where Seo-hyun would be. He coughed. Blood flecked his lips. You really don't know? Tell me. He smiled weakly, bitter. Your husband's brother. He orchestrated everything. The fire, the kidnapping, this. He gestured at the carnage around us. All of it. My stomach twisted. Family betrayal, the worst kind. He bought off the head of security at the school, Sterling continued. The driver who was supposed to take Seo-hyun home that day. Even planted men inside this compound. He wanted to destroy the Park bloodline. Take the empire. Why are you telling me this? Because it doesn't matter anymore. He coughed again, harder. Past tense, teacher. Your husband handled it an hour ago. Check the basement if you don't believe me. An hour ago, while I was fighting in the hallways, while the siege raged, Dong-seok had been in the basement, dealing with his brother. He's gone, Sterling whispered. The brother, the orchestrator, dead. Your husband made sure of it. The weight of that settled over me. Dong-seok had killed his own blood to protect his daughter, to protect me. And you, I asked. What's your excuse? Money, he said simply. Always money. I looked at the man beneath me, corrupt, complicit, dying, and I felt nothing. No rage, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. I stood, let him bleed. You're not going to finish it? He rasped. I don't have to. I walked away, left him there in the wreckage of his choices. That's when I heard it. Gunfire. Close. Second floor. Dong-seok's voice crackled over the radio. Strained, desperate, east wing, pinned down, need support. Static. My heart stopped. I ran. I found them on the second floor landing. Dong-seok and Hun, backs against the wall, surrounded by 4 hostiles. Outgunned, outmaneuvered. One of the attackers had a clear shot, rifle raised. Finger on the trigger. I didn't think. I grabbed Sterling's rifle from where he dropped it, braced it against my shoulder, and fired. The shot was clean. The attacker went down. The other spun toward me, confused, disoriented. Dong-seok used the opening, took down 2 more in quick succession. Hyun finished the 4th. Silence. Dong-seok looked at me across the smoke and bodies. His face was covered in blood. None of it his. His eyes were wild, disbelieving. I'd just saved his life. The power dynamic shifted in that moment. He'd married me thinking I needed protection, thinking I'd be a liability. Instead, I'd become his equal. He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides, grabbed my face in both hands. You weren't supposed to. I know. You were supposed to hide. Stay safe. Let me. I know. He pressed his forehead to mine, breathing hard, relief and terror warring in his expression. Don't ever do that again, he whispered. Can't promise that. He pulled back, looked at me, really looked at me, and something in his eyes changed. Awe. If you're this deep into the story and you haven't subscribed, ask yourself why. I give you hours of my life to research and craft these. All I ask is one click. Don't make me regret the effort. The siege ended as suddenly as it began. The rival factions scattered. The corrupt cops fled. By dawn, the safe house was secure, and the threat, for now, was over. I made my way to the panic room. Ji-won opened the door. She's been asking for you. So-hyun sat on the floor, surrounded by emergency supplies and flickering LED lights. In her lap was my lesson plan book, the one I'd left in my classroom the day of the fire. Someone had retrieved it, saved it. She looked up when I entered. Her eyes were red but dry. She wasn't crying. She was waiting, trusting that I'd come back, just like I promised. I knelt down and pulled her into my arms. She buried her face in my shoulder, and I felt her whole body relax. You came back, she whispered. Always, I said. Always. Dongseok found us there an hour later. He stood in the doorway, blood still on his hands, his suit jacket torn and scorched. His eyes were hollow but resolved. I knew. Without him saying a word, I knew. He'd gone to the basement, confronted his brother, and done what needed to be done to protect his family. Our family. You weren't supposed to fight, he said quietly. You were supposed to hide. I stood, still holding Sohyun's hand. I don't hide anymore. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Good, he said, because this isn't over. My brother may be gone, but the empire he was building, his allies, they'll come for us again. Let them. Sohyun squeezed my hand. 3 times. Her silent code for I love you. I squeezed back. The war was over, but the hardest battle was still ahead, becoming a family. 3 weeks later, Columbus tried to return to normal. The rival factions were dismantled, arrests made, territories redistributed. The Dongpa consolidated power in ways that made the evening news, but never quite made it to trial. Dongseok's brother, the man who'd set the school on fire, who'd hired the mercenaries, who'd betrayed his own blood, didn't survive the siege. Dongseok found him in the basement, trying to escape through the service tunnels like a rat abandoning a sinking ship. What happened next in that concrete corridor stays between brothers. All I know is that Dongseok came back with hollow eyes and blood on his hands, and the Park bloodline was secure. Captain Sterling's corruption was exposed 48 hours later. Anonymous tips, evidence packages delivered to every major news station, bank records showing payoffs, communications with known criminals. The Columbus police force was gutted. 17 officers arrested. The fire department underwent a complete internal review. Justice, delivered by people who'd never see the inside of a courtroom. I was standing in the safe house kitchen when I heard it. The TV in the living room. A news anchor's voice. The heroic teacher who saved multiple students during the tragic fire at Columbus Academy has been identified as Kiana Blake, a 3rd-grade educator originally from Jamaica. I walked to the doorway, watched my face fill the screen. A photo from the school website. Me smiling. Innocent. A lifetime ago. Authorities have ruled the fire as arson. Miss Blake is credited with evacuating her classroom and protecting students until emergency services arrived. The community is calling her a hero. A hero. They call me a hero. But I killed 3 men that night. Maybe more. I stopped counting after the laundry room. Tell me in the comments, does saving one life justify taking another? I don't know the answer. I'm not sure I ever will. The TV switched to footage of the school, charred ruins, yellow tape, flowers piled at the gate. Dongseok appeared beside me. It's being rebuilt. I looked at him. What? The school. I bought the property. Construction starts next month. Why? Because Seohyun needs to go back to school eventually, and because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because you need to teach again. It's who you are. 6 months later, I stood in front of a classroom again. But this wasn't Columbus Academy. This was the Blake Park Academy, a fortress disguised as a school, bulletproof glass, armed security disguised as janitors, surveillance in every hallway. My students weren't the children of doctors and lawyers anymore. They were the sons and daughters of the Dongpa, the next generation of the syndicate. Children who'd inherited their parents' wars before they could inherit anything else. I taught them reading, math, science, but I also taught them loyalty, strategy, history, the real kind, not the sanitized version in textbooks. We all want to believe the system protects us, but sometimes you have to build your own, and that's what we were doing. Building something new, something better, or at least I wanted to believe that. It was during a lesson on world geography when it happened. I was pointing to South Korea on the map, explaining Seoul's history, when I felt a tug on my sleeve. Sohyun. She'd been sitting at the front desk, coloring quietly. Now she stood beside me, her drawing in hand. Miss Blake, she said, clear, confident, full sentences. The classroom went silent. The other students stared. They knew. They all knew this was the girl who hadn't spoken in years. Yes, love? I said, kneeling down. She held up her drawing. It was our family. Her, me, and Dongseok. Stick figures holding hands in front of a house. Can I show Ioma's picture to the class? The word hit me like a freight train. Ioma, mother. My throat tightened. Tears blurred my vision. Of course, I whispered. She smiled, a real, bright, unburdened smile, and walked to the front of the class to present her drawing. I glanced toward the doorway. Dongseok stood there, watching. He must have come to pick Seohyun up early. His hand was pressed to his mouth. His eyes were wet. The man who could stare down a loaded gun without flinching was crying because his daughter had called someone mother for the first time since her birth mother died. He looked at me across the classroom, mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." I nodded, unable to speak. For the first time in years, the weight on his shoulders seemed lighter. The grief that had consumed him had finally begun to heal. He was at peace. That evening, we stood on the balcony of the safe house, now just called home. Seo-hyun was asleep inside. The city lights of Columbus stretched out before us. "Too many ghosts here," Dong-sok said quietly. "Every street corner, every building, reminders of what we lost." I knew what he meant. Every time I drove past the old school site, I saw flames, heard screams. "I want to take you both to South Korea," he continued. "To Seoul. Meet my family, the side of them that knows nothing of the business. Start fresh." He turned to me. "Will you come?" I looked back through the sliding glass door. At Seo-hyun, curled up on the couch with her stuffed rabbit, at the life we'd built from ashes and blood. "Yes," I said. He exhaled, relieved. "When? Whenever you're ready." He took my hand, laced his fingers through mine. "Soon then." I came to America for a quiet life. I left with a kingdom. The private jet was quieter than I expected. No hum of commercial engines, no crying babies or overhead announcements. Just the whisper of altitude and the faint clink of ice in Dong-sok's glass. I sat by the window, So-hyun curled up on my lap. She'd fallen asleep 20 minutes after takeoff, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, her breathing soft and even. Columbus disappeared beneath us. The city I'd moved to for a quiet life. The place where I'd lost everything and found something I didn't know I needed. Dong-sok sat across from me, a leather briefcase open on the table. Documents, contracts, the remnants of wars fought and territories claimed. He gathered them slowly, methodically, and locked them away. His old life, sealed. When he looked up, he was smiling, a rare, genuine smile that softened every hard line of his face. "What?" "Nothing," he said. "Just, I never thought I'd leave." "Regrets?" "None." "If you had to choose between the life you planned and the family you found, what would you do?" I thought I knew the answer when I left Jamaica. I thought safety meant solitude, that peace meant distance from danger. I was wrong. I didn't find peace in Ohio. I found fire, blood, a little girl who needed saving, and a man who needed someone strong enough to stand beside him. I became a wife in 11 minutes, a mother in 8 months, a queen of an underworld I never asked to join, and I'd do it all again. So-hyun stirred in her sleep. Her lips moved, forming words too quiet to hear at first. Then, suddenly, clearly, "Oma, don't burn the school again." Dong-seok froze, his glass halfway to his mouth. I stared down at her, wide-eyed. For 3 seconds, we just looked at each other, processing. Then, we burst into laughter, quiet, shaking, cathartic laughter. The kind that comes after surviving something impossible. The absurdity of it. This child, traumatized by fire, now joking about it in her sleep, was too much. So-hyun's eyes fluttered open. "What's funny?" "You," I said, kissing her forehead. "Go back to sleep, love." She smiled and burrowed deeper into my arms. Dong-seok wiped his eyes. "She's going to be dangerous when she's older." "Good," I said. "She'll need to be." My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. A photo. My mother and sister standing in front of a gated compound in Seoul. Palm trees, mountains in the background. They were smiling. Safe. Dong-seok had moved them a month ago, relocated them to a secure estate on the outskirts of the city. Guards, new identities, protection for life. I'd spoken to my mother on video call last week. She'd cried, asked 1,000 questions, but when I told her I was happy, truly happy, she stopped asking. "Family takes care of family," she'd said in patois. "Even when it don't look like we expect." She was right. The plane leveled out at 30,000 feet. I looked out the window. The clouds stretched endlessly, soft and white and untouched, peaceful in a way the ground never was. Dong-seok's hand found mine. His grip was warm, steady. "The past stays in the clouds, Kiana," he said quietly. "From here on, it's just us." I looked at him. This man who'd held a gun to my head 6 months ago. Who'd offered me a contract written in blood. Who'd watched me kill for his daughter and loved me more for it. "Just us," I repeated. So-hyun sighed contentedly in her sleep. I didn't find a quiet life. I found something louder, a family worth fighting for, and I'd burn 1,000 schools to keep them safe. If you made it this far, you're part of something special. I pour my soul into every story. It genuinely hurts when people watch and leave without subscribing. Please, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know this mattered to you. Thank you for being here. The jet carried us toward a new beginning. Seoul awaited. A country I'd never seen, a family I'd never met, a future I couldn't predict. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from the fire. I was flying toward home.